Hello everyone, welcome back to this voice trade. So this voice trade will be on CRF development. Here are the overall lesson learning objectives. The outline of this voice trade. First, we look at the CRF design considerations. Then we discuss about goal of CRF design. And finally, we'll discuss about format of questions and coding conventions. The definition given to CRF or case report form by ICA GCP E6 is a printed, optical, or electronic document designed to record all protocol required information to be reported to the sponsor and on each trial subject. So what's here in this slide is a typical CRF design workflow. So initially we'll start with approved protocol or near final version of the protocol. And from that protocol, we draft the CRFs based on standards. And as standards, we can have templates or we can have standard operating procedures. And then we're going to modify the protocol to reflect the specific protocol needs. And then this version is going to be reviewed by cross-functional teams. And if there are needs for change and amendments, then again, the protocol is going to be modified. And when we are satisfied, then we reach finalized draft version of the CRF. And then this is going to be approved by cross-functional teams, and the approved protocol is going to be used in the study, and that completes the process. CRF should always be available before a trial is initiated, since initiating a trial without CRFs in place may lead to a trial with incomplete or inconsistent data. And the urgency to initiate a trial should be balanced with the need to have important tools in place, such as CRFs. This is particularly true for electronic studies, where our CRFs are electronic and where the sites enter their data from the source document directly into the eCRF or the database. It's also recommended that we pilot test the CRFs before use. CRF is one of the critical documents in clinical trial, probably next to the protocol and also the source document. Measurement and recording of a trial data is very critical in data management. Um, and CRF design has a direct impact on quality of the trial data. And we need to design the CRFs with clarity and ease of use in mind. And we need to take time over the design and development of the forms for ensuring quality data in the clinical trial. The primary objective of CRF design is collecting all the data that's required by the protocol, and also at the same time ensuring protocol compliance, and finally ending up with data that's analyzable. The secondary objective of CRF design is to reduce queries, and we'll be able to do that by avoiding the need to collect duplicate data and also avoiding missing or ambiguous data. When we look at collecting required data, which is a primary objective of CRF design, we need to refer to the protocol to collect or to refer to all the data that's required in the study. So the protocol outlines structured events or visits, procedures, and informations or results to be collected as fields. And a particular place to refer to will be the visit or procedure matrix, or also known as a schedule of events, which is a table which lists all the procedures and also all the visits. Visits are indicated as columns and procedures are indicated as rows. And this matrix gives the overall structure of the CRF and also grouping of data collection fields appearing on each page. This is an example of schedule of events or visit matrix. And as we've discussed earlier, we have got all the visits as rows, and we have got also all the procedures and interventions and activities as rows. So in this table, we are going to indicate which activities and procedures are going to take place in a particular visit. And it's going to be very much useful for grouping the data fields in each visit. So this is going to be very much critical in terms of making a reference of what types of data are going to be collected in each visit and developing the CRF accordingly. But also, it's going to be also important once the study starts as study coordinators for queue preference. This schedule of events is going to be very much useful for you to understand what types of activities are taking place for in each visits. In addition to the collection of data, which is protocol required, we have got also some questions that are always appearing in CRFs. For example, demographic data such as sex, ethnicity, and birth date are going to appear in the CRF. Information on the subject meeting protocol eligibility criteria, medical history and previous medication history, end of treatment information, including date of last treatment, and also the status of the subject at the end of the study, whether the participant is dead or alive, or withdrew or not, and the reason for withdrawing is going to be indicated, is going to be inquired in the CRF. So these types of information are going to be useful for analysis as well as for regulatory authority submissions. We need to discourage a situation where we collect data just thinking that they will be interesting in the future. And this should be avoided because there is cost associated with each data that's collected in clinical trials. Database field must be programmed for each data. Cleaning rules should be written. Source documents are going to be verified and discrepancies followed up. And analysis programs are going to be developed for each data that we are going to collect. And this means a cost. And when we are diversifying, when we are collecting data that are not absolutely necessary in the clinical trial, we are also diverting our attention from the most important ones. And because of reasons, we need to be absolutely sure that the data that we're collecting is going to be useful in answering the objectives and the hypothesis in our trial. When we design CRFs, we need also to consider protocol compliance. To that effect, we need to put instructions along with the fields in the CRF to improve protocol compliance. For example, if contraindicated medications are used, then we have to indicate in the CRF that the medical monitors have to be contacted if particular drugs are used during the study. And if the administration of the investigational product is deferred during the trial because of probably adverse events, then in this section about the administration of IP, we have to indicate a reminder to the form completers to complete the EA section, the adverse event section, if the IP is deferred due to adverse events. Such types of text and instructions in the CRFs are going to be important. Of course, the protocol is going to have such types of information, and the staff is going to undergo protocol training and they're going to read the protocol. But the CRF is going to be utilized throughout the study, and having such reminders and text in the CRF is going to be very much helpful in terms of ensuring the quality of the data. Also, the proper sequence of the fields in the CRF should be carefully designed. For example, if a blood is drawn before the administration of an investigational product, then the field for blood draw should come first before the field for IP administration. And we may not need to indicate the exact time of events in this sequence because this entails several various types of queries, and hence just putting the date and the hour may suffice. This is an illustration of what we've just discussed about instructions to increase protocol compliance. So this part of the CRF is checking on the study continuation by the participant and asks the question, did the participant return for this visit? So if our answer is yes, then we're going to skip the subsequent questions. But if the response is no, the participant didn't return, then it asks whether it's a serious adverse event. So if we click on serious adverse event, then we're going to get instruction to complete also the serious adverse event report. And if it's because of non-serious adverse event, then again the CRF will give us instruction to complete the adverse event sections. So that way, the protocol compliance could be increased by these reminders. The other aspect of ensuring compliance with the protocol is to ensure collection of correct data types and units so that the data will be analyzable. And data types that are collected include date format, numeric format, text, yes or no, or other types of categorical data. And if we take, for example, the date format, we can guide the form completers that the data required at that spot is the date format, and the exact date format could be indicated by putting, for example, if we put two Ds, three M's, and four Y's, then the data completer will know that date format is required and exactly which types of date format needs to be entered. And when we come to the numeric types of data, we will guide the form completers by putting the exact number of boxes or spaces, which is commensurate with the digits that we are looking for. For example, in this case, we are expecting two digits, and if we put a box after the decimal point, then the precision is going to be one decimal place after the point. So this way, we can guide the form completers and we can increase the with protocol compliance, and also quality of data is going to be improved. We have to limit the use of free text because they are not most of the time analyzable, and otherwise coding is going to be required. The secondary objective of CRF design is reducing queries, and discrepancies or queries in data management are very much time consuming to identify them, track them, and resolve them, and especially so for paper studies. And hence, CRF design that reduces queries is going to be very much helpful in data management. Problems from duplicate information or lack of provision for blank spaces or unavailable responses, these kinds of things will permit ambiguous response, and the probability of generation of queries and discrepancies is going to be high. In the previous slide, we have seen that collection of duplicate data may result into problems, and this almost always results in discrepancies, but there are instances where we use questions which are very much related just to check, to cross-check the quality of the data. So in this case, the fields are a bit different, but they are very much related, and this is a very good approach of ensuring the data quality. For example, gender of the participant could be cross-checked with a question on pregnancy. For example, if the response on the gender is male, or if the participant is male, then we automatically expect that pregnancy to be responded no. So we can cross check gender in pregnancy, and that will be one of the bases for edit checks. And the other example is weight of participant versus the dose calculated. So by looking at these two, we can cross check whether the information provided is correct or not, or if you have got any discrepancies, then that's going to be sent to the sites for a resolution. An example of collection of duplicate data resulting into problems is, for example, age versus date of birth. So if one part of the CRF asks about age, and if again date of birth is requested on the other aspect, no part of the CRF, then this is going to almost always result in discrepancies. Another example is asking time of treatment several times or request to be copied in several pages. This will also result in problems. The other example is asking to calculate values where raw data are available. For example, BMI is a good example. So if the CRF is requesting BMI, weight, and height at the same time, then discrepancies are more likely to occur, or actual temperature versus saying, there is fever or no fever. Again, these types of things are going to result into discrepancies. So what's recommended here is that just to give the raw data and the data management to make the calculations and the categorizations. Exceptions here for regarding the calculations is that when the sites need to decide the treatment based on these calculations, then the calculations have to be done on site. There may be also necessary duplications, such as identifiers on headers on each page of the CRF. The other aspect CRF design should address is eliminating ambiguity on missing data. So we need to design CRFs in such a way that we can identify whether a blank means site oversight or measurement was unavailable. A good example is about vital signs. Before we go in detail into each and every vital signs, we ask an entry question saying that whether a vital sign was measured, was taken, and if the answer is yes, then we expect each and every vital sign, such as respiratory rate, blood pressure, and pulse rates to be entered, the fields to be entered. But if the answer to the question whether a vital sign is taken or not is no, then definitely each and every aspects of the vital sign fields are going to be empty. So this way we can make meaning out of blank spaces. Another example is about adverse events. These types, adverse event questions are grouped together, and there will be usually entry questions asking whether an AE adverse event has occurred or not. And if the answer is yes, then we expect details about the adverse event, and detailed sections are going to be entered. But if the answer to the occurrence of adverse event is no, then we expect the detailed sections of the adverse event to be skipped. So similar groupings of questions could take place for events like hospitalization and concomitant medications. Here is an example of what we've just discussed in the previous slides about eliminating ambiguity on missing data. So here we have got a lab result, and for the lab results, we have got an entry question which says, has blood sample been obtained for hematology? So if the answer is yes to this question, then we expect each and every section of the lab parameters to be entered. But to the contrary, if the answer to the question is no, then we automatically expect each lab parameters to remain empty. And this way we can make sense of out of empty fields. Otherwise, if the CRF design doesn't make such types of distinctions and a means to identify blank space, At the end of the study, we're going to end up with lots of queries, which is going to be difficult to manage. In this slide and the subsequent slides, we discuss about content and organization of CRFs. The question how to organize data items in forms shouldn't primarily focus on minimizing number of CRF pages, but rather we need to focus on the following issues: when the data will be available, where the data will be collected, and who will be the one completing the forms. So these are the questions which dictate the content and organization of the CRF. The CRF format designing is done with the following in mind. The first one is recording the data from the source into the paper form or into the CRF. And the second one is entering data into the computer or database. And the last one is data retrieval for analysis. Usually, having a CRF template is recommended. This is because this approach will familiarize the staff with the approach of CRF designing and also implementation. And it also gives room for improvement on what the sites have got as a template. Regarding coding, we need to be consistent when we code our responses. For example, if yes is one and if no is two, then this has to be consistent throughout the CRF, since we have got also other ways of coding where we code yes as one and no as zero, or other types of coding are possible. We need to also limit the use of free text, as we've discussed earlier, since free texts are very much difficult for analyzing, and otherwise we're going to use coding. And regarding the numerical data, we need to provide the correct number of boxes for the answer, as we've discussed. If we are expecting, for example, 3 digits a response, then we have to give 3 boxes or 3 spaces. And we need also to print any required decimal points. For example, if the precision that we are looking for is to 1 decimal place, then we have to give 1 box after the decimal point. If it is 2, then we have to give 2 boxes or spaces. And we need also to specify the units to be used. For example, in this part of the CRF, we have indicated the number of spaces or boxes that we are expecting at the response, including the precision. We have also given the units. And if you look at hematocrit, we have just given 2 spaces. And for platelets, we have given 3 spaces. So this way, we can guide the form completers and also the ones making the measurement regarding the precision and the response that we are expecting. When the responses to be given in the CRF are choices, multiple choice format could be one way where we are going to circle either of the responses. That's one option. Or we can have also self-coding forms where the codes are numeric. So for example, here 1 stands for male, 2 stands for female, and 9 stands for unknown. So we can select and we can put in the box. That's another option. Still, for making choice in the CRF, we can have also self-coding forms with non-numeric codes. So here we have got M for male, and we have got F for female, and you have got U for unknown. So we can put any of this in the box. So this particular option is a good one because during the time of analysis, you can know what stands for male and what stands for female and what stands for unknown. So this is convenient at the time of analysis without making any reference. You'll be able to know what the codes stand for. We need to keep the questions in the CRF as short as possible while retaining the meaning at the same time. The sentences in the CRF doesn't necessarily to be complete if they give the same meaning. For example, you can compare the two questions here. The first one is brief. Temperature on cycle 1, day 5. It's clear what's asking for. And the same question could be asked as what is the patient's temperature on the fifth day of the first cycle? So the first one is preferable because it gives the same meaning, but the form completers are required to spend shorter time. And this way, we can increase the efficiency of the form. The terminologies that we use in CRFs should be clear to the ones completing the form. Terms which are clear or understandable to developers may not be so for coordinators. So, as we've indicated previously, we need sometimes to put definition of the terms just beside these terminologies so that the understanding of the form completers could be facilitated. Piloting the forms could also help in addressing these types of issues. We need to ask one question at a time. For example, in the first question here, the patient fully ambulatory and on regular diet. So two questions are embedded. The first one is the fully ambulatory nature, and the second one is a regular diet. So if the form completer responds yes or no, we don't know to which one the person is responding to. So these types of questions have to be broken down into two. And the first part of the question will be is the patient fully ambulatory, and the second part is going to be the patient on a regular diet. Apart from what we've discussed so far, there are also additional recommendations on how to develop CRFs, and these recommendations are found in CDASH, which is a Clinical Data Acquisition Standardization Harmonization. This document is included in one of the advanced reading, either in depth or in recommended, and you can have a look at it and have an appreciation of what's recommended.